Thanks for coming. It's kind of an interesting experience for me to speak to IOTA. IOTA is like the project I've been following since 2017, but it was the one of the first few projects I've been deeply dig into. After
Very
I
nice.
started to read the white paper of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then I was looking at what else interesting. EOS and IOTA might be the two of the most fascinating technology I was get impressed by because I was from the CS background. I was looking at
Yeah.
Ethereum, looking at Litecoin. Is like for me, it's like copycat of Bitcoin, right? I mean, nothing fancy about it. I remember back in 2017, the top 10 EOS was like number 5 at one time, and IOTA was number 10.
Yeah.
Millions of TPS by EOS, DAG proposed by IOTA. I was reading the white papers and some documentations, and then wow, that looks so cool. I mean, the DAG.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's very exciting that you're part of the crypto space so early on. I think you probably also saw a huge transformation for one with the crypto space, right, which became a lot more, I would say, mature and professionalized, but also with IOTA, right? Because I think we also went through a very transformational change for the better, because I think now we are really realizing this bold and big vision that we had in 2015 when we started the project. And so it's a very good position to be in. And like we've been building for 10 years, which is a really long time.
From 2015 instead of 2017.
Yes, exactly.
It's already 2 years already.
Yeah, exactly.
So which year did you join IOTA?
2015, like I'm one of the founders.
Oh, you're one of the founders, right?
Yes.
What brought you into this like idea of I have to create something unique from Ethereum or from Bitcoin? I want to build something on a completely different technologies.
Like I've been in crypto since 2011, so since the very early days. And I really always believed in this notion of permissionless innovation, where anybody can just use the technology and innovate and build on top of it. And the 4 founders of IOTA back then, we were quite closely connected on a different project, which actually had smart contracts and had a lot of the big innovations. And out of that came the idea that, hey, like we need to solve these fundamental technical challenges that blockchain has, right? Around the mining issues, around the energy waste, around the scalability issues, around the fees. And so we came up with this new architecture, which we called the DAG, right? The Tangle, a directed acyclic graph, which is supposed to be much more scalable and sort of like by having this parallelized architecture to confirm transactions. And out of that then came the idea that, hey, we can actually really focus on doing real world adoption, right? Partnering with governments and enterprises to use our technology, because we fundamentally believe that blockchain only makes sense once it's being used in the real world, because that is really what we believed in and why we are part of this space as well. And so out of these 2 reasons why to focus on real world adoption and to have a new technological paradigm, we founded IOTA in 2015. It was obviously a very big and a very bold vision. This is something that not many people know, but we only raised $500,000 at the ICO. And so IOTA to this date is still the most profitable ICO ever, simply because we started from nothing and we built up this entire project, right? And it is quite a wild ride, but it's very exciting.
$500,000 ICO. That's the only fundraising you guys have.
Exactly. We've never raised capital after that.
No VCs involved.
No VCs, yeah.
That's back in 2015?
2015, yes, exactly. You can still read the Bitcoin Talk forum post and everything.
Just look at remember the last fundraising ICO from Echo? I think it's the Mega ETH, like 100 mils or 50 mils. I think it was raised, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, how could you afford? Because I was talking to Coey before he came. He said majority of the employee of IOTA was based on Europe, and there's like 130 of them. How could you support such a large team, and especially the European salary base is not Asia or Southeast Asia salary?
Yeah, we bootstrapped the entire business, right? We raised that $500,000. A lot of it went to legal fees, paying VAT because of the ICO structure that we had back then. So we basically bootstrapped the entire project. And the way that we did that is we launched a token, right? We gave 100% of the token supply to the community and to our token holders. And then we went to those token holders and we told them like, hey, if you want to have a foundation that is dedicated to IOTA, you need to donate tokens. Like something else that's unique, like me as a founder and the foundation, we didn't reserve any tokens for ourselves, right? Like I had to actually invest into IOTA to get tokens.
Okay.
myself, and obviously I was very early. But for example, for the foundation, for the IOTA Foundation, we raised 5% of the total token supply through donations. And with that 5% of the total token supply, we then built the entire business. The way that we did that is obviously we built the market around IOTA. Once it has been traded, IOTA was, I think, the third or the fourth token to be listed on Binance. And it was one of the first ones, one of the first altcoins on Bitfinex as well. And so that's how we built up the whole business, right? So IOTA went from a $500 million market cap to a $50 billion market cap in 2017. And so IOTA was really the biggest winner of the 2017 cycle. And I think, like the same way that Ethereum won the other cycles, or Solana won the previous cycle, IOTA won the 2017 cycle. And so this is why IOTA was the most profitable ICO. That's why a lot of people have a good fond memory of IOTA. The way that the crypto market works, obviously, it's a cyclical game, right? It's possible to win one cycle. It is very challenging to win multiple cycles because everybody in the market wants new shiny things, right? And so while IOTA won the 2017 cycle and we generated these amazing returns for investors, I think I made more people millionaires.
I think this one in China, which made a billionaires. I think one of the earliest top 10 maybe investors of the IOTA, and he becomes a billionaire. Yeah. I don't want to name his name, but he's super famous at the time.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so there was all these people that really made these insane returns with IOTA, and that's what I really appreciate about it as well. But obviously then I'm focused on running the business, right? And it was always a very difficult challenge for us because we needed to transform IOTA from where it was in 2017, where we were still very young and naive, and we didn't really know how to build a real business around it. So we had to go through this very painful process of transforming the project where we are today, where we have actual countries that are building on top of IOTA that are plugged into the mainnet, and where we have significant capital being used and invested into our infrastructure, into our technology, right? And so there was this whole transformation that we had to go through. And that was my main focus, right? Because I've been running the project since 2015, basically. It was always a very challenging ride, but I'm very confident that now we are better positioned than ever before. And so I think it's a very exciting time for us as well in this market.
You guys seems running on a stealth mode in the last few years. I mean, since maybe after 2019, I haven't heard much news of IOTA. Rather than those billionaires was like achieved back in 2017 and 18. And then since last month, I started read another documentations or tweets about IOTAs collaborating with Africa, doing lots of on-chain tradings, etc. for them. I do remember back in 2022, I was reading something about assemblies. IOTA used to not have smart contract support, right? It's like used for, I think the first concept was for like machines to machines payment, or similar as Nano. I remember the deck, another one is called Nano, like a micro payment and fast micro payment. Back in 2022, I was reading about assemblies. They're trying to build some VM to support smart contract, but after that, it seemed gone. I mean, I never heard of them anymore until now.
Yeah, no, very good. Because, like we also needed to understand what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, right? Like we tried to pursue this layer 2 strategy that Ethereum also had, but we also understood very quickly, like this is not our vision for how IOTA should be, right? We want to have one network where all the value accrual happens on the base layer, right? We don't believe in having these different subnets and layer 2s because it really dilutes the value. And so that's why also in 2022, we realized, hey, like we need to focus on the IOTA token and the IOTA token only. All the value accrual needs to happen on the IOTA network and for the IOTA token. And so that's why in 2022, we also went on this journey basically to fundamentally transform the layer 1, to move away from what we had previously where we didn't have smart contracts, to move forward into a new paradigm where we do have smart contracts, right? And so this upgrade actually went live earlier this year. So we call this rebased, where we completely changed the underlying layer 1 and we switched to a new architecture that is very similar to Sui. While so Sui introduced the Move smart contract language, and they actually also used a DAG, a directed acyclic graph, for their consensus. And so there was a lot of similarities between IOTA and Sui. And so we also realized that they are the most technologically advanced layer 1 in the market. And there's a lot that IOTA can benefit from adapting their technology to our needs and to improve it further, right? And so this upgrade, it took us like 2.5 years to really fully finalize it and finish it. And so this went live earlier this year. So I would say that IOTA today is the oldest layer 1 without any technical debt. Because if you look at Cardano, if you look at Tezos, if you look at Algorand, if you look at all these other chains, all of the OG chains, they have a lot of technical debt. because they bet on a technology stream that didn't make sense, right? Like how many builders are actually on these networks, right? Not that many. If you compare that to Ethereum, to Solana, to Sui, those are the main, like the EVM, Rust and Move, like Solidity, Rust, and Move are the main smart contract paradigms. And so it was important for us to bet on Move as a smart contract language. And this is why, just to repeat it again, we don't have any technical debt. And I think that's a very important position to be in, because we made this very difficult decision to throw away all the work that we've done in the past and to really leapfrog into the future. And so this is why we're very confident today with our technology stack that it is really super easy to get transactions confirmed. It takes like 400 milliseconds, right? Almost no transaction fees. And you also have Move smart contracts on the layer one, which really makes us a much more competitive layer one than the others. And so this allows us to now focus on real world adoption that nobody else can do.
So pretty much a developer which can build on Sui can do exactly the same on IOTA.
Exactly.
Okay. But I do remember you have like a dual VM support, right? If you have Solidity, you have an EVM support, like a dual Move VM and EVM together.
Yeah. So we have the EVM as a layer two. This was more of an intermediary thing that we developed in 2022, right? So to bootstrap the ecosystem and get developers on our network. But the main focus at the moment is really on the layer one and the Move chain, right? So all the new dApps, for example, all of the big assets that we're starting to tokenize, that all of that happens on the layer one. It happens on the Move layer. So the EVM is being supported, but we don't see a future in it, basically.
I see. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the potential of Move VM still not being released. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, people was talking about how good Move VM should be. Like number one is more secure, and number two is like supporting those concurrent, parallel processing, etc. How the way it treats the resources instead of like just a number of a smart contract like EVM. The current dApp still not fully releasing the potential of Move VM. Yeah, I'm excited to see the Aptos Sui and now IOTA to have maybe a huge growth in the next 2 or 3 years. That's in my expectations.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like this is really where the opportunity is, right? And so what we focus on IOTA is to do this radical technological transformation to really make sure, the IOTA today, the only thing that remains from the IOTA in 2017 is the name, is the brand. Everything else has fundamentally changed. The tokenomics have changed. We introduced staking rewards, right? You can stake your IOTA tokens today and help to secure the network. We're fully decentralized. There's nearly 100 validators on the network. We have smart contracts on the layer one. So it's radically different. What is most exciting about IOTA today is that we are definitely next to Solana, next to Ethereum, we are the third biggest network when it comes to real world adoption, in my opinion, right? So we are really leading the path here with onboarding entire countries that are actually digitizing their trade, right? Trade digitization on IOTA. They're also issuing digital identities, and they're also tokenizing physical assets. So we are really focused on building this real economy on top of IOTA, and we're not pursuing the gaming, we're not pursuing the NFT stuff. We don't really pursue meme coins, right? And so we really focus on the real economy, and we don't chase the hypes and the narratives.
Myself was never a meme lover, so I like to always to trade blockchain as something which can boost the real world economies. Like that's why I tweet lots of things about Ondo, on-chain stock and stable stock as well. Private equities on-chain even. So back to IOTA, I started to read something. You guys are making some noise since last month about ADAPT, like Africa Public Infrastructure of Digital Tradings, etc. I was thinking, because the momentum you guys are trying to raise is there's like trillions of dollars of trades, world trades, and it's fully relying on 40 billions of paper contract or whatever documentations, and you guys trying to digitalize that. So if we go for IOTA scan, like either scan, when we look at those transactions, what are we expected to see on those transactions? Are they like the uploaded documentations, or what the raw data or the processed data may look like?
Yeah, maybe just to take one step back, right? Like everybody in crypto is always chasing the same thing, right? Everybody did gaming, everybody did NFTs, everybody did meme coins, everybody did DeFi. And it's just really like a very crowded market. It is very difficult to actually stand out, right? So all of the layer ones that have chased the same hypes and the same trend, they're really struggling right now because they have no longer an identity. right? Nobody actually knows what chain XYZ actually stands for because they have done everything, all general purpose adoption. What we did with IOTA, and we made this decision 3 years ago, is we said we are going to focus on real world adoption. We're going to focus on trade, right? Because we see, the blue ocean strategy where you're basically creating your own market. We saw a huge opportunity for IOTA to create its own market where there's no competitor, right? Everybody talks about tokenizing stocks. IOTA talks about tokenizing commodities or critical minerals or trade receivables, because this is where we see a huge opportunity for us to be the leader in the market. And this is really where we are dominating. And so we created the solution for 3 things, right? And all of that happens on the IOTA mainnet. For one, we're digitizing trade. So that, to your question, is about trade documents. So instead of you getting a physical paper document on the border with the custom and the border agency, you now get an NFT that is linked to a document, right? And this document can be securely encrypted, stored off-chain, but you get an NFT and you show the NFT as a proof to the border agency, to the customs authorities, and then with that, your good can be cleared, right? So what we have achieved in our trials in Africa, in Kenya, but also in the UK, is that we reduced the time for goods to clear from days to minutes. And it's a huge, huge benefit, right? So this is why IOTA is partnering with governments, because governments understand that we can be a huge efficiency boost to their processes. So we digitize trade. The second thing that we're doing is we're issuing digital identities. And so what you see on the network as well is that some of these traders actually issue their own digital identities. And that also includes products, right? Digital product passports. So every product actually has an identifier, which is a transaction on the network. Now, the third thing that we're doing is we're tokenizing physical assets. So, for example, in Africa, we're already tokenizing commodities, we're already tokenizing critical minerals. In our early trials, we've done around $2 to $3 million worth of volume so far by tokenizing this physical asset. And we're generating real yield with that, right? So the average yield that we're able to generate right now has been around 10 to 12%. So that means you're getting real yield out of the real economy, and all of that is happening on IOTA. And so we are focused on getting all of this activity onto the IOTA mainnet because we firmly believe that this is how we're going to get millions of transactions per day. And this in turn means that all the value accrual is going to happen on the IOTA network and for the IOTA token. And so this is really, I would say, this is the real business that we are building with IOTA. The same way in which Hyperliquid has built a real business, we are building the real business around trade.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Well, let me ask you a tough question. For a government of Africa, what made them make a choice of collaborating with you guys instead of they can directly collaborating with Ethereum or maybe any layer 2 or maybe Sui directly or Solana? Why did they choose to work with you guys for this?
So one thing I can tell you for sure, other blockchain networks are not our competitors because none of them actually have the same technological capabilities and the same products that we have. So our trade digitization solution is the only one in the market. Our biggest competitor used to be IBM with the Hyperledger, but all of the permission blockchains, they really failed. So our biggest competitor today is Swift. So Swift is our main competitor because it's a centralized company that is now trying to enter the market and is trying to compete there. So we are really building the Swift of trade, right? If you think about it, by digitizing trade, doing payments, doing finance. And so the main reason why these governments actually chose also, for example, why we have been able to partner with the Tony Blair Institute or why we've been able to partner with Trademark Africa and the World Economic Forum is because we've been on the market for 10 years. We've been pursuing and building our vision for 10 years, and nothing has changed over the last 10 years. We've never done any shady marketing. We've never done the pump and dump game and any of that, right? Like we really are a non-profit foundation that is reputable and that has built a reputation by focusing on the real world. And so that's what these companies, these entities, and the governments really appreciate because they understand they can rely on us. So it's not even that they're choosing a technology, they're really choosing a partner, and they've chosen to partner with us.
Right. As you said, you guys focusing on these directions and focusing on this only. You don't do any meme coins. You don't do any other stuff like other universal layer 1s or layer 2s doing. You guys purely focus on this. So they choose you as a partner to, that makes perfect sense. It's like a vertical racetrack that purely on this path. So let's assume I'm a new retail, either a customer of you guys, or I'm I run a company in Africa. I want to explore how IOTA should boost my business or my trading, etc. What should I do? I mean, is IOTA purely running on the back end, which the retailer was not even aware you guys' existence, or you guys have some front end UIs or app for people to log in to do something?
Yep. So we have a front end where they actually log in, where they can see the entire trade. What we are doing right now, so IOTA is already live in Kenya today, primarily with the flowers, right? With the flower businesses, because Kenya is a big producer of flowers, something that not many people actually know. In Q1, we're going to bring all of this activity onto the mainnet, and we're going to cover all commodities, right? So any commodity that is being exported in Kenya will then can be digitized on IOTA. Right, so a lot of it happens in the back end, right? But we also have a front end where anybody can log in. One thing that I'm personally really excited about and what we have been doing in trials so far is trade finance. Because there's a huge funding gap in trade finance, right? Where there is like $2.5 to $3 trillion in funding need per year that is unmet. And so we with IOTA can actually match that by tokenizing these commodities, right? We have access to the data. We have all the trade receivables, we have the invoices, we have the export documents. We know where the goods are in the supply chain, right? In which warehouse. Now, what we can do is we can tokenize these assets, and then we can plug them into DeFi protocols, for example, right? We can have a trade finance marketplace. And that is the way in which we'll have a lot more direct impact as well for the traders. Because right now, with the trade digitization solution, the main impact that we're having is for the government to be more efficient. This is our entry into the market. What we're really focusing on, especially in 2026, is trade finance, right? Tokenizing these physical assets and then bringing them on chain and then providing SMEs, like small businesses in Africa or around the world, better financing options. Because, for example, we did trials in Rwanda, which is bordering Kenya as well. There, some of the miners, right, the SMEs that are producing tantalum or other critical minerals, they're paying between 20 to 25% interest rate. Now, in our trials, we were able to get that down to 10 to 12%. And that's a huge growth unlock for these businesses because they can get cheaper and better capital. And we can then plug that real yield on chain so that the liquidity providers, in the same way that Ethena today is struggling to create yield, they're really at 4%. We can then, for example, create a dedicated stablecoin that will be backed by physical commodities and that will be paying a 10 to 15% APY from the real yield in the real economy.
Okay. That like a centrifuge with MakerDAOs, I remember there's like a few.
Exactly.
Would you be worrying about the default?
So the default, it's all insured. So the goods themselves are actually insured. Right? So if something goes wrong in the supply chain, there's an insurance for it that will cover it. We even have some structures that have capital protection. That always means that there is less yield being paid out. And we actually know where the goods are, right? Like we have the identity of the traders, we have access to all the trade documents. We can really verify the authenticity of it. And so with that, for example, one of our partners, which is called Tradeflow Capital, they've been in the business for the last 7 years. They've done around $4 billion worth of turnover, right? Financing of goods, and they've had 0 defaults. And so they're going to be one of the partners that is going to come on chain and offer these deals on the IOTA network.
Is this collateral-based lending something related to Twin? I mean, Trade Worldwide Information Network. I read something about that. Is that the things you're talking about?
Exactly. So Twin is the product that is built on top of IOTA that specifically focus on digitizing trade.
Yeah. And loans and lendings involved too.
Exactly. So that's going to be the next iteration of it, where we're actually going to build like a marketplace around Twin, where these tokenized goods can be offered for financing.
And also, it was an interesting topic. Have you watched the debate between Hasib and Santiago a few weeks ago regarding how should we value a layer one? Because IOTA is a layer one, right? And Hasib from Dragonfly, he's saying, don't just underestimate layer ones. It's like Amazon's. It takes years to go for the exponential growth, while the other people do not agree with him because they are saying layer one, even Ethereum or Solana doesn't have a strong moat. And if you look at their PEs or PS using a traditional stock market way to evaluate layer one, none of them worth these kind of billions of dollars, especially Ethereum, like $300 billion. So the PE ratio is like 380. As IOTA, as a layer one, first I want to know which one would you agree or support? I mean, do you agree on Hasib or do you agree on Santiago's? And second is, how would you evaluate the valuation of IOTA? We used to evaluate some layer ones using like TVL, which is the most traditional metric. And then I think someone invented, I think this guy invented called IEV. It's like a combination of NEV plus LST, LRT to represent how much money people is willing to pay for the block space based on the NEVs and LST, IRT stuff. So
Yeah.
how would you rate or evaluate IOTA using this kind of a metric? Which metric would you?
Yeah, it's a very important question. I think I really love that we are really moving forward into building real businesses, because I think one thing that has been really punishing for crypto is that we have all of these big ideas and all these big visions, but none of it actually gets realized, because the biggest problem that we've had so far is that the token was the product, right? So many of these founders actually just optimize everything to pump the token, right, in one cycle to generate returns, then in turn exit it, right? Because the incentives in crypto are very misaligned. And this was one of my biggest disappointments in crypto. I am a founder and I see myself as one of the main shareholders in this business. For me, IOTA is a business, right? This infrastructure is a business. I never like the idea that we are supposed to exit at the top and then buy back at the bottom. I rather want to build something that is long-term sustainable, where everybody benefits from the mutual growth that we are generating out of this infrastructure, right? Like that for me is the best case scenario, right? Where it's really like a tech stock. And so this is really where I want to get. And I can tell like a couple of years ago, like I was really like thinking like, hey, what am I doing in this space? Because I also have an AI company, right? I have a different business. So it's like, this is really frustrating. Like I don't want to wake up in the morning and think about creating meme coins, creating pointless tokens, because this is not what I believe in, right? I believe in real adoption. And so like 2022, 2023 was a very frustrating period for me, because it was like, this is not crypto for me, right? This is not why I joined, and this is not why I dedicated the last 15 years of my life to this industry. Hyperliquid really changed the game again, because with Hyperliquid, it was about having this token flywheel where we have one business and all the value accrual happens on the hype token. And so I have a huge respect for Jeff and the Hyperliquid team, because they really showed what crypto should be all about. And I think that's what really reinvigorated my love for crypto as well. And so that's what I'm really excited about doing with IOTA. So just about the PE ratios, right? I do not think that it is fair to do a one-to-one comparison between stocks and infrastructure, right? Because look at some of these AI companies in the world as well. Like many of them have a PE multiple of 200 or 300 even. Some of the funding rounds of early stage early stage AI companies happens at the $1 or $2 billion, raising $200 million, and they have zero revenue, right? So you cannot compare some of these high growth, high risk opportunities with a traditional stock corporation that has been on the market for 30, 40, 50 years. It is about discounting for future growth opportunity. And if we look at some of the other infrastructure in the world, like Swift, Visa, all of those transactional networks, that is really where we want to head towards with layer ones, right? Because these ecosystems, like this infrastructure, can actually have a mode by having liquidity, by having an ecosystem around it, and by being sort of like vertically integrated and embedded in certain verticals. This is why for us, we never really believed in this general purpose adoption, because with general purpose adoption, you're not actually building a moat, you're just chasing the next hype and the next narrative. For us to build a moat is for IOTA to be embedded in a port and customs system in governments around the world, because that is how we're going to get access to the data. That is how we're going to get the ability to tokenize the physical assets, and that's how we can then generate returns on the network, right? So this is how we're building up this moat for IOTA. I also don't believe that TVL is the right metric, because you know how mercenary TVL is. Look at some of these other networks where they have $2, $3, $4, $5 billion worth of TVL, but once the incentives dry up, you can fake the metric easily, right? Once the incentives dry up and all the TVL disappears, and then you're really struggling. So ultimately, it is about having a clear vision about why IOTA should exist, right? And for us, why IOTA is really, hey, we're here to be the Swift of cross-border trade. This is what we believe in. This is where blockchain makes sense. This is where IOTA makes sense. This is where we can have trillions of assets on the network and billions of transactions per day, because it's such a huge market and it's such a huge opportunity. And then really focusing on building up these modes that are defensible. Nobody's going to replace IOTA, because it's not a technology decision that these governments make ultimately. It is about trust, partnerships, reputation. And we have been building that for the last 10 years. So that's what I really believe in. I don't think there's a better valuation metric. I do think that IOTA right now is greatly undervalued. And the main reason why IOTA is undervalued is because we never had supply control like some of these other networks had. We never played these gimmicky market marketing games that others have done. We've never really had market makers up until like a year or so ago. And so like we don't really play the game that others are doing. We're focused on building a real business. And for me, IOTA is a token that should right now be in the top 50. But this is obviously what we're working on towards, so that the market also starts to slowly wake up.
I like the analogies you're using Swift, because imagine if Swift launched a stock, how should we evaluate Swift? How much valuation the Swift stock should look like? It's going to be hard. It's definitely not going to be the PLP way of a traditional stock way. I remember you mentioned back in 2023, you were frustrated, right? Because the crypto world does not evolve as you imagine. But how do you see the current market? I mean, I think the market, at least people around me, start losing faith of pretty much all the altcoins, even including Solana and Ethereum. Like only Bitcoin have found his PMF of being a digital gold, although it's kind of completely different from Satoshi's initial vision, like a peer-to-peer electric cash system. Now it's a digital gold, but at least it's found the PMF, and Wall Street is recognizing it. All the rest, even Ethereum and Solana, people still now debating whether it should worth these billions of money. And all the altcoins, even on Binance or on Coinbase, you see the price, it just keeps dropping, and people are not buying those narratives or things anymore. So how do you see the market now? Bear, bull? What's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years?
You know, it really depends on what you look at, because I really believe that something happened on the 10th of October that really fundamentally broke the trust in crypto. There is no doubt about it. That's such a huge liquidation event. I would still love if there was more discussion around why this happened and the post-mortem by some of the big players, right? Because there has been no transparency, and there's also been no accountability for what happened, because people have lost tens of billions of dollars in that moment. And it really eroded a lot of the trust and a lot of the belief in crypto and what it is, because it really felt for many, like I'm an OG in this space as well. I've been in this market since 2011. I've been part of every bear and every bull market. And it feels like what happened on the 10th of October, it feels like a rigged game where you're just part of something that you cannot control. And it stopped being about changing the world, and it started all being about making as much money as quickly as possible, right? Like crypto has been a game where it was about enriching a handful of individuals that are really at the top of this game. And I think this is why a lot of people, especially OGs, lost belief in the system at that time. I think that's a really disappointing and a really sad reality that we're in right now. If you look at some of the adoption cases that are happening, where these institutions are actually building on-chain, they're actually figuring out how they can offer custody, how they can offer OTC services, how they can offer trading for crypto assets, and even build a new own product. I think that's super exciting, right? Like, I think on the adoption side, it's looking better than ever before, but on the sentiment side, and so like the belief in crypto, it's the worst time ever, because it feels like, who's going to buy these coins right now, right? That's a sad reality. But this is exactly where we need to change this, and we need to show people that there's a better future where crypto is not the rigged game, but where we are actually going to build the infrastructure that will be at the core of a modern digital economy. And that is what I believe in, that with IOTA, we can actually play a part in changing the game, right, and showcase a better future. It will take time, but I think this is what we're really working on, because we have real adoption happening on the network. It's not faked, it's not paid for like that, but it's really like fundamental adoption happening on the network. And I hope with that I can also make people believe in crypto again.
So besides the commodity sweep of the Africa, or even more real world involved, like IOTA is doing, any other racetrack you think might be booming in the next 1 or 2 years, like maybe prediction market or perp trading like Hyperliquid with HIP3, or something else you think might be worth mentioning in the future?
I mean, there's three